Okay, well, I'm going to give you a little heads up about what my next video is going to be, but right now I want to address one claim made by one guy in a video down there. And it's this. The fact that Paul W.S. Anderson is apparently a good director because he realizes that what makes a good game does not make a good movie, therefore ignoring the storyline actually improves on it. Wow. Problem with this. First of all, he actually followed a lot more closely when he made the first Mortal Kombat movie. So, to say that he recognizes this isn't necessarily the case. In fact, even with the first Resident Evil movie, it was at least a lot closer than what it became. He didn't have any of the characters in it, but like I said, if anything, it almost, to me anyway, felt like that was being set up as like a prequel or a side story or something to the games, so I didn't really complain with the first movie too much. It was watchable, although it wasn't stellar. Same with the first Mortal Kombat movie. It was okay, but it wasn't, anything to be, up in arms woo-hooing about either, unless you were a kid. um, which, by the way, is another topic I'm going to be talking about in the not-too-distant future. So, but, when it comes to zombies and whatnot, that's another topic I want to touch on. But when it comes to this, to say that wow, someone is a good director because they ignored the source material, that I cannot believe someone would say. Um, Granted, not everything that makes a good game makes a good movie. If you were to like say, well, look what they did with Prince of Persia. And I know some people are mad about that, and they're going to get mad I'm saying this, but I think that was a good movie. And here's why. When you look at Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, yeah, it does have a basic storyline, which, if you look, is still in the movie. The problem is they do add a whole bunch of stuff they said that wasn't in the game, and that is true, and here's why. Most of those games, or at least most of that particular game, is platforming. Most of the events involve platforming. Most of the, you know, which does severely limit you in terms of film. So here's what they did when they made that. They took the legend that the game was conceived based on, and they added stuff from the game and made that movie. You can argue whether or not they should have done it or whether or not it was a good movie. I think it was. I think they actually did something smart there. Um, the guy who wrote the script was a big fan of the game, so I really think if he could have just kept it to the game, he would have. But he was a fan of both the newer games and the old retro Prince of Persia games. So, at any rate, point here though is that while that could be the case, and I mean Mario, I don't know why they even tried to make a movie based on Mario. Certainly back then, because the game, was very simplistic. But at the same time, you would have to add details at that point in time before. I mean, now the story's actually evolved a lot more to the point where they almost could. I'm not sure if it would translate well into live action, and probably should be like CGI or something. Excuse me, but they could make one though that they have a lot more to work with. Back then, though, that was a bad idea because you would have to add a whole crap load, and look what happened. But to say that ignoring the storyline in Resident Evil was necessary, no, it wasn't. That movie was like praised even back when it was new for having a very cinematic feel in the story. It's a very good, very detailed story. Granted, there are like missions, side quests, running back and forth, that have to be cut out, and that's doable. You could still take the storyline of that game and adapt it into a movie very easily. The same for the same holds true for Metal Gear Solid. The same holds true for God of War. The same holds true for Uncharted. Unfortunately, I really don't think they're doing so well there because they are adding very unnecessary things. Um, the same can be said for a lot of these games. A lot of these games. And yet, you know, people keep saying, "Oh, well, what makes a good game doesn't make a good movie. We got to do it our way." No, That's why game companies now are... See, the thing about Hollywood is the reason they keep trying to make video games into movies. Two reasons. Number one, they're running out of their own ideas. And number two, they know these things are popular and they know that people think they're good. Which is why they want to do it. Thing is, game companies are getting smarter, and now they're starting to realize that they need to try to keep more control over the project, which sometimes they've been able to do. In fact, when Bruckheimer made his Prince of Persia movie, he, the game developers actually did have a lot more say in the movie. They're trying to make an Infamous movie. I don't know if they really should do that. I don't know. It's going to be very complicated to do because you got a lot going on in that game. You got 3 main villains and whatnot there. The different islands. That's something that I could actually see working as a live-action television series, but not the point. The point here, though, is that there are games with very cinematic storylines. And you can take these games and make movies out of them. Very easily. In fact, you wouldn't need the talents of too much more than an editor to make it happen. Know what to cut out, what to leave in, and work from there. It's pretty much already written for you. Heck, I could do it. I'm confident I could do it with a lot of this stuff. I know I could. And I'm not even a professional yet. But to sit there and say that, you improved on it by taking established characters, breaking them down and making them weak and dependent on a main character, who you overpower, and it's hilarious how they're all depending on her, and yet, yeah, like I said, different video. I'm going to be talking about zombie movies, period. But it's hilarious how this happens, and they're just so radically changed, and sometimes they wind up with like all this backstory that they don't even explain, because like the guy down in there says, he just goes from this to this, and that's it. Which is funny because then he talked about the depth of the genre that he's working in. But to me, I don't know. I find it funny that people can think this way. People really do think this way. And to sit there and say that so long as the characters are in it, it's fine. It's kind of bullcrap. Especially since in the next movie, Anderson's talking about bringing Leon Kennedy into the picture, even though in part 2 you can clearly see a newspaper clipping on the wall where it speaks of Jill's partner. Yes, Jill's partner was now Leon. It even says his name, Leon S. Kennedy, being killed. So yes, in part 2 Leon was dead. But now somehow in part 5, if it gets made, hopefully it won't, but if it gets made, Leon's going to somehow show up not dead and more likely than not evil. More likely than not evil. It's stuff like this that really just, bugs the crap out of you. Throwing in stuff that's basically just throwing a bone to the fans while you're literally making your own movies is ridiculous. I mean, Paul, if you wanted to make your own zombie movies, why didn't you? Why did you feel the need to call it Resident Evil if you're not going to base it on Resident Evil? Why? Same for all these adaptations that don't even bother following their source material. Why are you going to bother calling it this when you're not even going to pay attention to what it is? You're going to do your own thing and just borrow this title. Why bother doing that? And then I see the logic of, it gives the fans something new. If the fans wanted something new, they should have done something else, because guess what? That's not this. That's not this. They're not making their own thing. If Paul Anderson wanted to make a side story to the games or something, where there was this Alice character, fine. He's doing his own thing. It doesn't necessarily contradict the games, and you can still even then call it Resident Evil, and it's something new for the fans. The first one arguably could have fit that had it not been for a couple things tossed in. But to sit there and say that they want, the fans are sick of the same thing and want to see these characters get stripped of who they were, completely altered, and made dependent on this overpowered Mary Sue here, that's ridiculous. That is frigging ridiculous. It makes no sense. It'd be like saying, instead of, doing something else with Star Wars, you took the old characters, you completely redid them, and you made them all entirely dependent on that. Oh wait, they did that. Star Killer. And there we have the same problem. It's, it doesn't work. It's just downright offensive to the original thing. It is. It degrades it. It really does. You're taking these characters who are these really good, well-developed characters, and oftentimes they replace them with just underdeveloped, codependent shells that completely rely on good guy X here, good girl X here to constantly bail them the hell out. I'm sorry. It's ridiculous. And as for arguments that he's not sexist because he's got women who are capable of beating zombies to bloody pulps with their bare hands, the old games, the old story of the games, had very strong, independent women who were running around killing zombies. And in the case of Resident Evil 3, with Jill taking on frigging Nemesis, without having to resort to over-the-top, headstone smashing, ninja kicking superpowers, That was just ridiculous. But this is the kind of mentality that Hollywood has, though, and that there are people who encourage this and think it's a good thing. Why? Because they're told it's a good thing. This is where critics come in. Especially people like Roger Ebert. Roger Ebert's actually contributed a lot to video game adaptations getting butchered. Because, see, film is an art. Video games, however, no matter what, no matter how well it's written, no matter how well it's designed, no matter what, can never be art. Therefore, they have to find a way, in their minds, in the Hollywood mindset, to take something that is not art and elevate it to the form of art. Bullcrap. I could tell you about 30 games that have better scripts and better stories than almost anything in Hollywood. Those things have depth, they have well-developed characters, they have some amazing visuals, they oftentimes have a very good message, so don't even sit there trying to say that a video game can never be art. If you're going to say a video game can never be art because there exist, like, beat-em-up games or arcade fighters, well, guess what? There are also movies like this. I'm not saying this is a bad movie, but, look at it. It's a ridiculous, over-the-top, straight-to-DVD spoof movie. There exist bad movies. Movies that are pointless, senseless, nothing more than, made for cheap laughs or cheap thrills or softcore porn pretty much half the time. And yet somehow that doesn't prevent film from being considered art, and yet because there exist video games where, you're not, constantly trying to tell a story, then, I guess somehow this prevents them from being art. You know what? Yeah, I am. This right here was a work of art. Beautiful visuals, beautiful story, amazing characters, and yet this is an art. However, something like, Avatar, which is literally just a rehash of things Hollywood's done 100 times before, is art. But that's where the mentality comes from. It's down here. It's not art, it's down here. And so you have to bring it up to the level of film, the level of art. That's their arrogance. That is their mentality. In their mind, they are eternally always better than them down there. And hopefully now we're a little bit closer to understanding this mentality and how ridiculous it is. And next time, we're going to be talking about zombie movies in general, including the Resident Evil films and how they're screwed up. Again, I touched on this once, but I have to do it again, specifically on storylines. And then we're going to be talking about Mortal Kombat and why people are throwing such a fit about certain things. At any rate, catch you later.